Hello, good evening and welcome to Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7, coming to you live from our studio here at Adesanwe Kanda in Accra. My name is Martin Asiedu-Dartey. Coming up this evening, minority demands a bipartisan probe into security services recruitment exercise following a revelation only a fraction of the over 500,000 applicants will be successful. We'll bring you that story in detail in a moment. And also coming up this evening, members of the Civil and Local Government Staff Association of Ghana, CLOGSAG, refused to call off strike despite an order by the National Labour Commission to end their ongoing action and engage the employer.
And then as a union, you say we should keep quiet. No, we're not going to keep quiet.
Good for good.
Yes. We're not going to keep quiet. We're going to fight for our members. So the strike action continues unabated. So Aluta, continue.
We'll bring you details of that strike, which has entered its third day today, and how long will it go before some agreement is arrived at between the CLOGSAG and government. Details in a moment. And finally, a surge in kidney cases reignites calls for the adoption of healthy lifestyles as Ghanaians join in observing World Kidney Day today. All of this and more coming up, including business and sports, at the tail end of the program. Before that, though, let's bring you some news summaries.
Hi, Martin. In our summaries, the Ministry of Health has suspended the principal of the College of Nursing in Kenya, Frederick Anaba, with immediate effect pending an investigation. The suspension follows allegations of over-admission of students and unauthorized introduction of new academic programs at the institution. The ministry issued a query to Mr. Anaba on February 19 concerning the 2025-2026 admissions process. After reviewing his response, the ministry determined that a full investigation was necessary to establish the facts. In the interim, Mr. Anaba has been directed to hand over administration of the college to the acting vice principal to ensure the smooth running of academic activities. The Gammanche King Takiteko True II joined the British monarch King Charles III and foreign ministers of the Commonwealth as culture and contemporary governance converged at Chatham House in London to commemorate the 2026 Commonwealth Day. King Takiteko True sat alongside King Charles, marking a strategic convergence of influence, diplomacy and cultural identity that can open meaningful pathways for the traditional rulership in the Ghana state and Ghana as a whole. Finally, oil prices again topped $100 per barrel on Thursday as widespread Iranian attacks on Middle Eastern energy facilities overshadowed a vast release of government reserves. As Donald Trump vowed to finish the job and press ahead with the U.S.-Israel war on Iran, the country's regime stepped up retaliatory strikes on economic targets across the region. Several merchant ships were stuck in and around the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important arteries in the global trade. 3 crew members aboard one of the ship, the Thai-registered Mayuri Nare, were believed to be trapped, the vessel owners have said. And that'll be it for the news summary. For more of this and a whole lot more, please check our website, 3news.com. I am Christabel Success Trevor. Martin.
Thank you very much, Christabel. Let's settle for the details of our stories now. We're starting from Parliament, where the minority in the House is calling for a bipartisan probe into the centralized recruitment process adopted for enlistment into the country's security services. This follows the disqualification of hundreds of applicants after they wrote an aptitude test as part of the recruitment exercise. This year's recruitment has seen an unprecedented number of applicants, and that's according to the Interior Minister Mohamed Muntaka Mubarak, who says that more than 500,000 young Ghanaians applied to join the country's security agencies, even though only 5,000 positions are available. The Ghana Immigration Service alone received about 180,000 applications for just 1,000 available slots. The Ghana Police Service also recorded around 130,000 applications, competing for approximately 3,000 slots. The Ghana National Fire Service attracted more than 124,000 applications, while the Ghana Prison Service received over 71,000 applicants for only 500 vacancies. Let's listen to the Minister of Interior, Mohammed Muntaka Mubarak, when he spoke to journalists in Parliament regarding this particular development.
The police force that we have, the number that we have, just as I mentioned, 49,000 plus. Immigration, about 18,000 plus. Fire, about 17,000 plus. Prisons, about 14,000 plus. Narcotics control, about 3,000 plus. When you put all of them together, they are less than 100,000. They are less than 100,000. But even that, the wage bill on them is about 13 billion. So if the resources were there, I mean, I would have been the happiest person if we were able to recruit about 500,000 more security people. But let's be practical. Will our economy be able to absorb that? We all know that practically that is not possible. If you have a police of 50,000, can you really take 130,000 and add to an existing 49,000? So this is where we find ourselves, and I want to plead with the rank and file of our youth to appreciate that. That's why we introduce a number of other measures that we are hoping into the future may even help us as a way of screening.
And that is Muntaka Mubarak, who is the Minister in charge of the Interior. Meanwhile, the minority in Parliament has called for the entire recruitment process to be halted until a bipartisan parliamentary probe is conducted. The minority described the process as a Ponzi scheme allegedly designed to fleece the country's teeming unemployed youth. Addressing a news conference, the ranking member on Parliament's Defence and Interior Committee, John Ntimfojo, also demanded a refund of fees that were paid by the disqualified applicants.
Why should the government go ahead to overpromise and lure over 506,000 unsuspecting young people to go through this costly and emotionally exhausting process? It is most unconscionable. Even more misleading and exploitative is the decision by this government, politically motivated decision to increase recruitment age limits from 25 to 35 years. So as they were expanding the age limit from 25 in the previous status quo to 35, the signal to the whole Ghana is that now there's more space. So even additional 10-year older people can apply. This policy shift trapped even more unemployed youth to apply. This government significantly expanded the applicant pool and heightened expectations among thousands of desperate but qualified young people seeking employment. Such a decision, ladies and gentlemen, was reckless, misguided, and intended to create the false impression of sufficient financial clearance to accommodate more applicants. We reiterate the cogent calls earlier made by the minority leader of the Minority Caucus, Honorable Osahin Alexander Kwamina Afenyomakin, and further call for the following urgent actions. Number one, and first, there must be an independent bipartisan probe into the entire centralized recruitment process for immediate and appropriate review before we continue. And number two, very, very importantly, responding to the plight of the 500,000 potential recruits who have been scammed, we demand the government must refund the application fees of 220 cedis per application form to all applicants who were disqualified through knocked out technology constraints, who were disqualified not because they did not qualify, but because of the problematic nature of their aptitude tests by the questionable recruitment process. They must all be restored to every amount they lost. And here, to put it in perspective, most of the applicants will tell you that they bought 2, 3, some even 4 forms to all the security agencies. So for the person who bought 3 forms to Ghana Police Service, to Immigration, and to Ghana Fire Service, such a person has lost 660 cedis, not to talk of the cost of traveling to recruitment centers.
And so you heard the voice of the deputy ranking on the Defence Committee in Parliament. It's actually the ranking member on Parliament's Defence and Interior Committee, John Ntimfojua, there, asking that at least, if not for anything at all, there should be a bipartisan approach to look at the issues of the recruitment into the security services. And then also added that also those that will not get to be employed should be refunded. Their monies should be refunded to them. In a related development, the national chairman of the governing NDC, that is Johnson Asiedu-Dartey, says that the party leadership will engage the Interior Ministry and resolve the recruitment issue. He spoke during a thank you tour here in Accra. Let's listen to Johnson Asiedu-Dartey, national chairman of the NDC.
Nipa yebetimi afa wo mo presi ni anya sika twa wo mo ka e wo Ghana no nyina no 5,000 enti said nipa 500,000 ukoyi mu 5,000 ama wo mo adwuma wo say dey pa.
This year's recruitment numbers have overwhelmed us all. Based on available resources, we can only take 5,000 personnel out of some 500,000 that's applied. It is our prayer that in subsequent years, owing to the prudent economic management, we can take in 10,000 to 15,000 recruits.
Last year, Yebesan abue ebia sade sika no etutu ye no ebia na afi de na adu 10,000 ana adu 15,000 eno no ye cha breno enye kesiti se afi we de no.
And that is Johnson Asiedu-Dartey, national chairman of the NDC. Let's speak to security analyst Dr. Emmanuel Soate. Doc, a very good evening to you. Thank you for joining us on 3FM.
Thank you, Martin, for having me. Good evening to your listeners.
Right. Now, to start with, 500,000 applications competing for just 5,000 slots. How do you assess this? And could the advertisement for these slots at least specify that we do not have as many, so maybe we need to, lessen the expectation of the applicants? Well, what do you make of all of this?
Your question suggests you have an answer, which is the right answer, that transparency, accountability, fairness is important, particularly in a context where, for example, when you look at the Afrobarometer, state institutions are suffering from what in criminology we call legitimacy deficit. In other words, when you're operating within a context where you have challenges with trust and confidence, you want to be as transparent as you can. And so your answer inherent in your question is correct.
Right, and how would the security services have gone about that? How would you advise that? For instance, the police service, we are told, has just about the police service has a position for just 3,000 people, but 130,000 applied. So for 3,000 slots available in the Ghana Police Service, as an example, how would you advise the police to advertise, or in their advertisement, how do they tell people that these are the available slots?
Okay, thank you again. You see, it goes back to the issue of transparency and accountability. I believe that to build trust, it takes time. And to do something that will precipitate mistrust is very easy. And I think that in this particular case, I go back to my first response that because of the legitimacy deficit, anything government will do and opposition will do is, depending on where one stands, is interpreted in a very interesting way. In other words, when you don't have trust in the system, conspiracy theory easily thrives. One thing that I think we could do, first of all, is the bipartisan or multi-partisan approach, not only active partisan politics, but maybe a broader constituency involving civil sector of society. Now, generally, the numbers should be born out of a policy. So, for example, you have a national security strategy, which is being revised. In other places, you might have also the defense policy for the defense sector. So, for example, if you have a national security strategy that says that in the next maybe 5 years, because it is revised every 5 years, the one we have here, you might say that, okay, you want to prioritize protection of your economic exclusive zone because you think that if the Navy is able to protect the exclusive economic zone, we'll be able to save the country X amount of money, maybe $100,000 every month because of stealing of our stocks. And when we save that 100,000, there are other domino effects. And for you to be able to protect, for example, our maritime exclusive economic zone for fairly decent amount of time in every year, or to protect our stocks. Maybe now we have maybe 5,000 Navy personnel. You want to increase it to maybe about 5,000, about 10,000. So you have a gap of 5,000. What it means is that the recruitment numbers are tied directly in federal of a national security, broader security strategy. And out of the strategy, any naval officer well-trained will tell you what they need to accomplish a particular task. Any naval officer. Any Air Force officer will tell you that if you want to provide particular air coverage, they will tell you what they need. Every police officer well-trained at a particular rank, if you ask them that, okay, this is our national security strategy, we want to enhance presence along the northern borders, we want to provide security to facilitate 24-hour economy at the region, at the division, at the district, at the post, they will tell you the things they need. And so when, for example, the Navy says that they need 10,000, but you have 5,000, and you cannot, in the next 5 years, and you cannot recruit all the 5,000 in 1 year, you will then justify the number that you are recruiting based on economic consideration, based on other factors like other sectors of the economy here and there. And then you say that, okay, this number is as part of our desire to accomplish this national security strategy. And for us to position the Navy well, at least in the short term, although they need maybe 5,000, we can only recruit 1,000 at this time. And these are the reasons. And then you go to police, and then you go to fire service. We are doing a number of things. One, we are bringing clarity and opening the room for others to share their opinion about the recruitment process. You are being transparent. You are tying in figures to a broader national goal, and everybody will see that, okay, this recruitment is done, and these are the factors that are driving these numbers. It is clear, everybody knows. So you have all these things for the various agencies. What then happens is that you are dealing with transparency, you are dealing with accountability, opening the space for security sector governance, you are creating other views into it, and you are building consensus. When it happens at the time that you're going to recruit, everybody knows that this is the formula, or this is the method, and these are the figures. And so even if people don't agree, you've given them some level of explanation that underpins the figures. When it happens, of course, people will still want to apply. If you say you have 5,000 slots for all these organizations or institutions, people will still apply different times and to different organizations. But at least the element of some level of transparency, accountability, and fairness then comes in. The other thing is also this. You talked about what can be done. Is that, you see, sometimes discriminatory practices are not open, like gender discrimination. Gender discrimination is not always something you can see. They are sometimes embedded in institutional logic. They are embedded in, for example, values and norms. They are embedded in practices, societal practices, family practices. And until you unpack those practices, you might think those issues are gender neutral. But they are not. It's the same here. So you might say that, okay, you are doing aptitude tests. You are using the internet. You want to use technology to drive a process. But you don't think as though everybody is of a particular status. You understand? There are different status. Because when it comes to policing is also predicated so much on social environment in different constituents. So, for example, you might go to a village where the best person who can police there well might be somebody who has very little idea about computers, but has strong legitimacy in that community. So you want to use technology, but you also want to be sensitive to the local context. So if you are talking about internet, you are talking about computer, you are talking about camera, you are talking about even the knowledge of it, you are talking about strong internet connectivity. By virtue of this criteria, as necessary but not necessarily sufficient, as the necessary begin or the necessary environment or the necessary factors to be able to proceed. You are discriminating because it's not everybody who gets a laptop. It's not everybody who knows how to use the laptop. It's not everybody who will be in a position to have strong internet connection. It's not everybody who knows how to engineer the internet and things like that. So you want to be as fair and as transparent across the various constituents in the country. So economic status, knowledge of computers, and where the person stays, the person's socioeconomic status, can they afford computers or not, and all those things. If you don't do that, you are discriminating almost invariably. And I think that two things here. For me to conclude, two things here for me to conclude. One is, yes, using technology, but also being sensitive to the wide variety of applicants and making sure that in dealing with them, you make sure everybody understands that you are being carried along, you are being fair, you are being transparent, and you are not doing business as usual. The interesting part, and let me conclude here, is that you see the accounts have a proverb. They say, "Fideyi abua nusunku, ofima nusunku." You can explain to your non-Ghanaian audience. You see, when the parties are in power and they are in opposition, they have different perspectives. So, for example, the recruitment the last few years, when NPP was in power, they defended what they were doing. They gave the impression it was brilliant. And NDC was complaining about some of these things, about some of discriminatory practices, lack of transparency and things. They were complaining. NDC was complaining. NPP justified it. Now that is turned. NPP is complaining and NDC is trying to justify it. And that is the pain. Because you see, when you take the Hansard, even from 1965, when you look at some of the issues that were discussed in Parliament, Model Paper Palu and things before Kulungugu, they were asking very rigid and very robust and very insightful and deep-searching questions about security sector governance, transparency, accountability, and things like that. But it was after Kulungugu that changed. But let's come to this Fourth Republic. When the second parliament, when Nana Akufo-Addo and J. Penta were in parliament, if you look at the Hansard, if you read the Hansard and the questions they were asking, you'll be amazed. And those questions were brilliant questions that enhances security sector governance. Whether they ask those questions based on principles or political opportunism is open to debate. But still, those questions were brilliant. Let's come to the last parliament. James Agaga was asking certain questions that I was clapping for him because they were deep-searching questions about security sector governance, oversight, and accountability. Why am I going on this historical tangent? To underscore the fact that the problem of recruitment into the security is systemic, and that depending on who is in power, they have different perspectives. And that brings me to my conclusion that we have to see the problem of recruitment, promotion, transfer in the security service beyond just any particular party perspective. It is bigger, it is systemic. And until we have other actors like civil sector of society, media, asking questions and reinforcing some of the things that are raised, and we would have problems having this ping pong between the two major political parties. Right. And when they are in power, they say one thing. When they are in opposition, they say another. And it's dangerous for they themselves, politicians, because when it gets to a time, what will then happen is that people will say they are all the same people. When they want power, they will say everything to have power or maintain power.
It's like they make sense in opposition, but when in power,
it's because they want to get power. But then when it comes to their welfare in parliament, they almost invariably agree. It doesn't matter the party. They will almost invariably agree when it comes to their welfare.
Right.
You hardly see them fighting like they do, way they do when it comes to other issues. But when it comes to their welfare, they always agree. And I think that...
So, Mr. Soate, clearly there's a challenge with the system of recruiting, and like you indicated...
Repeating myself, is reminding the politicians of this historical antecedents of this switching position, and the other side, civil society, holding them to account to the principles that we need.
Right. And so I'm picking off on the back of your last submission, which is that those in authority who can correct some of these anomalies about recruitment when in opposition...
Please, in case you are speaking, I can't hear one word, please.
Can you hear me now?
I can't hear one word, please.
Can you hear me now? Hello, Mr. Soate. Oh, we seem to have a challenge with the line. I'm trying to reach Emmanuel Soate, and I will try and reconnect the call so we hopefully conclude the conversation and some very cogent positions being shared by security analyst Emmanuel Soate. And I'm just probably trying to conclude the conversation and ask my two final questions about what the minority is asking for. And you totally hit the nail on the head with the submission of the fact that when in power, their position is different. When in opposition, it is different. And then when in opposition and they finally get the power, they seem to be shifting the goalposts. So clearly, it's a call that I think that cuts across or cuts both ways. Mr. Soate, thank you for joining us again. I think we had a slight challenge when I was trying to ask my next question, but your submission was fully heard and was on air. My question now is, considering the fact that the people in authority who can change or bring some change to the recruitment process, shift the goalpost when they are in opposition or they are in power, how do we ensure that these concerns are properly addressed? The minority is asking for a bipartisan approach to solving it, and that the entire process currently ongoing should be scrapped. Do you agree to the scrapping? And if yes, how then do we proceed?
Brilliant question. Power does not belong to the politicians. It belongs to the people of Ghana. It is very important to have that in mind. In other words, we can compel politicians who are close to power and not too close to power to start pivoting towards what we want them to do. Politicians are very smart people. Anything that will let them lose power, at least in the short term, they will try and respond to it. So please, let's disabuse our mind from the fact that the power lies with the politicians. It doesn't matter the level. It lies with us. And the strength in the means that we can mobilize. And the strength also in Ghana is that we have a youthful population. Like in Africa, most of the people are less than 35 years. If you combine the age with social media, they can mobilize and demand accountability. Although they are increasingly shrinking civic and political space, and the youth are usually elbowed outside the boardroom, they can still get into the boardroom through the window, through tunnels from underground, and enter the boardroom. This is, proverbially speaking, and assert their influence. And so one way is to can you imagine all those who apply, mobilizing and demanding accountability, that the process should be more transparent, and that they think that they've not been dealt well. If they mobilize, the politicians will respond. And that is what brings in the other issue of oversight. Now, Asiedu-Dartey was trying to do some form of damage control and trying to show some sensitivity that, at least from the perspective of the party, they think that it's a problem, and you will see what they can do to it.
Okay.
Whether he's saying that because of whatever reasons, at least what he's saying is true. And I think that we have to go back and ask those questions. The other thing is that this committee that some people will call committee, you see, it's been replete in the police service. Let's start. After 48 trials, there was a report on the 1948 trials, partly touched on the police. Then in 1951, you have the Young report, partly touched on the police, the Young report, 51. And then the Boys report, 1971, still on police, different aspects. Then Hoppenbauer, 1979. Then after Hoppenbauer, you have Tibiru, 1986. After Tibiru, you have Ryan report, 1992. After Ryan, you have Archer report, 1997. After Archer report, you have Okujetu, the stadium, 2001.
Yes.
After Okujetu, the Yawaso Short, 2019. And then the Achia one about this recording. And so it is not always like the committees and the commission. They are important in certain respect, but translating those findings into practice. In other words, where the rubber meets the road, it's where sometimes you have challenges. And I think that some of these issues, if you've had problem with recruitment, I think that some of the issues can be solved. Transparency, accountability, and making sure that you are sensitive to different constituents, making sure that apart from the recruitment, you deal with broader issue of mistrust. Because you see, all these things, repeating myself, are happening within the context of legitimacy deficit, as you say, in criminality. In other words, at the time when we actually need people to have more trust and confidence in state institutions. For example, because you need people to have trust and confidence to share information with you that is processed into intelligence to combat extremism, jihadism, and things like that. You need some level of trust for people to comply. In criminology, one of the best ways of compliance with the law is not deterrence, it's voluntary compliance. And voluntary compliance is born of so many things. One of it is treating people with dignity and respect, giving people the opportunity to air their views. I'm talking about procedural and distributive justice, generally. And those things are helpful. If you don't have those broader dimensions or those broader trust system, you might want to deal with the recruitment as one issue, but because it is just one in a major system that has problems, you'd always have these challenges. So in the long term, you are dealing with legitimacy issue. In the short term, making sure that you carry the people along as much as you can. And one way of doing that is transparency and accountability.
Dr. Emmanuel Soatey, very well earned Dr. Emmanuel Soatey. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Oh, please, thank you so much for having me, please.
All right, so we'll definitely continue this conversation going forward on how we can reform our recruitment process of Ghanaians who are willing to offer their services to the nation regarding the security services and the current challenges that we are facing. 500,000 applicants, only 5,000 positions available. That's quite a staggering application system and the slots available. So we need to try and reform the system going forward. And both parties, the NDC and the MPP, in fact, the leadership in Parliament and the security agencies are all discussing it, to get to a certain level of conclusion on how to ensure that people who are genuinely interested in serving their nation can get that opportunity and do so well. We are staying on issues regarding labor or how recruitment can be done and done effectively, but some people who are already in service to the nation through various capacities have formed an association called CLOCSAG, and they have raised concerns about conditions of service that have not been met by the employer government. And the latest in the twist of their 3-day-old strike is that they say they will continue with their ongoing strike, citing a lack of progress in discussions with government. According to the association, recent meetings with government officials have not yielded any concrete outcomes. And CLOCSAG says that government had promised to provide a document outlining a schedule for payment to address their concerns, but the document has yet to be presented. Meanwhile, the association has criticized a ruling by the National Labour Commission describing the decision made in their absence as one that smacks of bad faith. The strike follows years of delays in fulfilling a memorandum of understanding signed with the government in 2019. Among its key demands, CLOCSAG is calling for the immediate adoption of a new salary structure agreed upon with the government, in addition to rectifying long-standing agreed-upon improved working conditions. Let's listen to Isaac Bampoado, the Executive Secretary of CLOCSAG. Then we can now pick the thoughts of Labour consultant Mr. Austin Game.
And this is the National Executive Council of CLOCSAG. The National Executive Council of CLOCSAG reviewed all interventions that had been made in relation to the strike action embarked by CLOCSAG from the 9th of March. After deliberations, it was unanimously decided that the strike action should continue unabated. Thank you. Any questions? Yeah, we have requested government that all the discussions that we've had should be put into writing. We are yet to receive that.
All right, so that is Isaac Bampoado, the Executive Secretary of CLOCSAG. Let's speak to Mr. Austin Game, Labour consultant. Mr. Game, it's 3 days old. We've been engaging you. We are grateful that you make time to even give us better understanding of the underpinning issues when it comes to labor issues in Ghana. To start with, they have clearly, after disrespecting the call by the National Labour Commission for a meeting, have now come out to say that their strike continues unabated. What is your reading of this particular new twist?
Thank you, my brother. I think that the Labour Commission has gotten to its limits. And because every and anything that people want to do has a first step to be taken. The CLOCSAG leadership went into a meeting with their employer as far back as 2019. And they think that the employer is infringing on the implementation of the agreement reached. So they are complaining. What is the laid down procedure to be followed? The procedure to be followed, number one, is that you have to, as a union, and CLOCSAG is a union, they have to go and lodge a complaint of the conduct of their employer through the independent body that has been set up by law, that is the National Labour Commission. They have not taken that first step. They went into the media and make a definitive pronouncement that on such and such date, if our employer do not yield to our request or come to table to discuss, we shall go on strike. And they honored that kind of threat. But that is not the procedure. The procedure says, if you come to the end of the road and there's nothing you can do, go to the commission, lodge a complaint to the commission, and demand that they attend to your request. And the law enjoins the commission to summon both the employer and the union to appear before them, which body is a tripartite body, to enable them make a definitive determination of what should be done to resolve the matter. If upon all this, and you know it, and you are not able to do it, and you are holding your customers to ransom, indeed the whole nation, including everybody, to ransom, what else do you expect the Labour Commission to do than to make a pronouncement on you that what you are doing is illegal or inappropriate? That's where we are now. And the Commission has further powers to do what they should do. I'm even surprised they said they're inviting them for a meeting on the 18th, which means Wednesday next week. It's too far. They cannot be treating their customers the way they are treating them now and expect us to be clapping for them.
What kind of impact would CLOGSAG strike have on the economy, or which sectors would be most affected because of this strike?
Well, the point is that the public service and civil service have some role they play. It includes providing services to people by way of documentation, by way of registration, to enable the people to have access to their goods and services. And that is where the employer or the government generate income, including paying them the money they are looking for. And we are not generating the money as expected of us. And so that is where we are. If the economy is wobbled or is wobbly, obviously it affects themselves, it affects you, it affects me. That's what it is.
Two final questions, then you can take leave of us. The next one is, it looks as though they seem to, CLOGSAG that is, seems to have the bargaining chip, and they are asking, in fact, for not even attending upon the invitation of the NLC and reiterating their demand that their strike is, a luta continua. Can government decide, for instance, to start looking at bringing in new employees to fill some of the critical positions that are being affected by this strike? Is that an option for government?
I think the employer can do a thing like that. It's not the option. The option is not that. The Labour Commission reserves the power, and they know exactly what I'm talking about, to compel them to go to work. And look, I'm pretty sure that members of CLOGSAG are not very excited and happy about this. The assumption is that this matter is something to be resolved in a day or so. That is on the night, if they should go at all, and they've gone. But because maybe this is the attitude traditionally of and the spirit that rules this country, people think that they have to control the employer by way of forcing him, using strike as a weapon to force the employer to yield to their demands. This time around, I don't think any serious employer should do that, yielding to such things. It's a threat, it's an intimidation, It's a cowardice action. You have to go to table and negotiate and make your case strong. They have negotiated, according to them, 2019. The employer is not implementing it. They should take the step by reporting the conduct of their employer to the National Labour Commission. And the Labour Commission is not an appendage of any government. It is the body that was put together by the tripartite body, inclusive of CLOSAG, unions, employers, and government. And the chairman of the commission is a product of unions and employer, not government. So they don't hold their personal views. They went through a system. They are now highly experienced people there, and a very good hand in the executive. They should be able to summon them. Otherwise, they should go to the law court, the original jurisdiction, and get them to go back to work while the case is being determined. That's what it is.
Right.
And if I were to be there, I guarantee you, 5 minutes they'll go back to work.
Oh, well, then maybe you need to be invited to the negotiation table to help resolve these matters.
No, not to the negotiation table. The Labour Commission that the tripartite body put together have been given authority and power to cause them to go back to work. And I say, if I were to be there, that is what I would do.
Right.
And I mean it. Right. And they know it.
And my last question would be the fact that they are asking for a change of the current salary structure. Do you think, is there any fundamental problem with the current salary structure we have?
I agree with CLOSAG in that respect, that there is the present structure is not fit for purpose. It's a notches kind of structure. It does not respond to any productive thing at all. It has nothing to do with the labor law at all. It has all wrong things to do with it. So the structure must be changed. It's not meant for CLOSAG alone. It's for universal. In fact, the president has already announced that he was going to set up an emolument commission, independent, to review the remuneration and salary administration, for that matter, in the country. That's why this matter must be handled with care. You cannot, the government or the employer should not be yielding to individual constituents. That's why they went to a tripartite committee meeting to determine what should be done. But nonetheless, I take nothing away from CLOSAG. They are a union. They have the right to seek the good of their members, and I support them for it. And I support them if they are calling for a new salary regime. I work on such things, and so I agree with them 100% that what we have now is not fit for purpose. That one is for sure.
Mr. Game, thank you so much for your time and thoughts as always.
You're most welcome.
And Austin Game is a labor consultant and dispute resolution expert, helping us understand what's been going on and how all of this can be resolved, at least in the shortest possible time, so that these workers can resume work to the service of Mother Ghana. You're listening to Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. We're taking you now to other stories that we have for you this evening, having to do also with current developments in the country. So we also know, for instance, that Parliament has resumed and a lot has been happening on the floor of the House. Before we take you back to Parliament, there is also the story about the National Buffer Stock Company and their issues with whether or not they are purchasing the rice that is produced here in Ghana, which is a directive that was given by President Mahama. We'll get into that detail shortly. The minority in Parliament is raising concerns over the 14-month delay in the payment of salaries to nurses across the country. Reacting to a statement on the shortage of health professionals, the Member of Parliament for Damongo, Samuel Abujinapo, indicated that the prolonged delay undermines the effectiveness of the country's public health system.
Nurses in the public service of our country, nurses who have been recruited, have not been paid salary for 14 months. If we are going to build a robust public health system for our country, these are matters we have to prioritize, where when nurses are recruited, they are paid. not only do we have 13,500 nurses who have been trained, equipped, ready, and willing to work, not being recruited, but even those who have been recruited, 14,000 of them, a good number of them are working as we speak, and yet for 14 months they've been working and they've not been paid.
And so there's a minority representative who has been speaking on the issue of recruitment of nurses. The majority, meanwhile, has also been commenting, and the chairman of the health committee is refuting the claims put together or that have been made by the member of parliament for Damango, Samuel Abujinapo.
I want to correct one fact. The previous speaker said that 13,500 nurses are unemployed. I think that is factually wrong. 13,500 nurses were employed before the NDC came to power, and they were not paid. As we speak now, they have been kept on pay. They are being paid now as we speak. So that is not correct.
So that's the majority side. He's actually the chairman of the health committee in parliament, also giving his position regarding whether or not the statement made by the NPP in parliament about recruitment of nurses is true or not. And we are going on to the story about the national buffer stock, and the company has denied claims that they have refused to buy locally grown food from Ghanaian farmers following a directive by President John Mahama, who has asked them to prioritize local produce for the National School Feeding Program. The chief executive officer described the claims as misleading and unfounded, insisting that the buffer stock has been fully committed to sourcing produce from domestic farmers in line with government policy. George Abredu-Otu is the chief executive officer of the National Food Buffer Stock Company.
The problem is that so far, let's say we've been given 300 million. But let me tell you, in order to do a meaningful mop-up, we need at least 1 billion Ghana cedis. You understand? So you can tell, I keep telling people that 300 million is small. The impact is very small. But I'm comforted by the fact that this is the first time something of the sort has been done in so many years. You understand? It hasn't been done before. And then our warehouses were in a state of disrepair. You can't just go and mop up. You mop up, and where do you keep them? We have to make sure we get the right conditions for storing the grains. You understand? So that is how it is. 300 million is not enough. It doesn't come anywhere close to the minimum that we require. But I'm happy because we've started somewhere. 100, 200, who knows? So we exhausted this 200 million. Nothing stops me from approaching the Minister of Finance to give us more money. You understand? So that is how, apart from warehousing problems that we are solving, apart from the cleaning and the slow nature, you even some of them, you go and buy, have to go to places, transporting them, being on these bad roads, it's a challenge in itself, you understand? So that is why it appears to be slow. People are complaining, they are not seeing us, buffer stock, how come you are not at our place? I will just take this opportunity to appeal to our farmers to just exercise patience, you understand? We have to make sure we get the right conditions to store the grains, because in order to maintain the nutritional value, the wholesomeness of the food and all that. Otherwise, I will end up causing financial loss to the state, because you go and store them under very poor, deplorable conditions, and if they are not fit for human consumption, what do you do? So that is why I appear to be a bit slow, but we are working. As we speak, I keep harping on that. There are people in the field buying, maybe, and we can't be everywhere at the same time, but people are working.
And you heard George Abredu-Otu, the Chief Executive Officer of the National Food Buffer Stock Company. Let's turn our attention to health now. And in Ghana, about 13.3% of the population is living with kidney disease, according to the Ghana Kidney Association. Even more worrying is that many people are living with the condition without knowing their status, increasing the risk of severe complications. This comes as the world marks World Kidney Day today, the 12th of March. There is more in this report. Right, we do not have that story for you at this moment, but we'll definitely bring it to you in our subsequent bulletins. Remember, you're listening to 3FM 92.7. I think we have a related story about kidney concerns and kidney issues in the country, and we are told that about 13.3% of the population in Ghana are people who may be living with the condition of kidney disease, but majority are unaware of it, mostly also because they have not done any tests to check. Let's listen to this.
Also, drugs that people just take it anyhow. I'm not saying that herbal medicine is not good. If you ask me which herbal medicine causes kidney disease, I may not be able to tell you. But what we are saying that use drugs that you know, especially if you have other diseases, you don't know the state of your kidney. What the kidney does is that anything that the body doesn't like, it will take it away. But if you don't know the state of your kidney and then you take people, it's like you are putting chunks into your body and your kidneys, you cannot excrete them or remove them, then all this will worsen the other organs of the body, and then it will not work for us as Ghanaians. So that is what I want to say. And then from our data, we realize that it's not elderly people. When you compare Ghana with Europe, UK, America, it's the elderly people who are not working. But for us, it is the young people who are supposed to work to help their families, to help the nation move on, who are getting this kidney problem. So we want to help our young Ghanaians so that together we can build a better Ghana.
And I heard that concern being raised there and the caution being given for us to pay attention to our health, because coincidentally a lot of the current diseases or majority of the cases of ailments reported to a number of the hospitals have to do with lifestyle choices. So we need to be mindful of what we consume, what we drink, and how we live our lives, because a lot of people are turning up in the hospitals with strange ailments or advanced ailments because they are not taking good care of themselves. So that is just by way of caution and an advice for you to be mindful of what you do and how to take care of yourself if you want to live long. And then you also need to pray and give your life to God and Jesus, and make sure that they help you live the life that you're living more forwardly, more positively, to the glory of God. And that's how we bring the bulletin to an end. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Martin Asiedu-Dartey. This has been Hot Edition. It was live from our studio here at Adesanwe Kanda in Accra. If you visit our website 3news.com, you'll find many more stories there, as well as our YouTube and Facebook where this bulletin has been streaming. Thanks for listening. We'll resume and go back to other programs.